Super excited to have you join us on this edition of the show. A more organized logistic industry will certainly drive further growth for a lot of startups, and this is what my guest on this edition of the show is trying to achieve. Watch out for our conversation shortly. But for now, here are some news and updates. I am Chukwemeka Agbata, and this is Tech Trends.
An increased push for energy efficiency, renewable energy technology, electric mobility, along with the growing digitalization movement and universal carbon pricing structure would speed up the carbon-free future and the rise of a global middle class we desperately need.
Rashid Aro is a 300-level law student of Afe Babalola University who is seeking to give individuals control over how they spend their money. Rashid says he first got the idea when he realized how much he was spending that he couldn't account for.
One of the problems we face in school is the fact that we spend on a daily basis, and sometimes we do not necessarily know where this money is coming from. Suddenly we just discover that, boom, like money has finished in our account. So personally, that was something I was really going through, and then I used to make budgets on a notepad, and I saw it wasn't so effective. The mere fact that I make a budget on my notepad doesn't necessarily stop me from exceeding the budget or even spending more than the budget. I literally do not even follow up what I write down, and there's usually no way I categorize the money I spend. There's no way I always know the amount particularly I spend on food or the amount I spend on getting school things and all that. So everything is just literally scattered, and I just see that, oh yes, I've spent 20K within 3 or 4 days, and there's really no way for me to account for the expenses I made.
Realizing that this was a problem without any existing solution, Rashid reached out to his childhood friend Oluwatimileyin Ogume, who is a computer science student at Babcock University in Ilishan, Remo. They brainstormed on different solutions that didn't see the light of day.
Development of the application began in October 2021, but we had the idea earlier that year in August. But Rashid and I have had multiple entrepreneurial opportunities before that, with the likes of a mobile insurance application, which we did not follow through with, and a possible student marketplace.
Then later in July 2021, we came up with the idea of Tracker, then started cooking up, and we got a solid idea by August. By October of 2021, we started building, and by December, we were done. One thing Timmy and I were trying to target was something that has never been done in Nigeria. So the moment we get an idea and discover that it has, when we get an idea, one of the first things we do is to check if something like that exists.
After a series of idea blocks, they finally came up with Tracker, a revolutionary finance tool that gives individuals control over their finance goals.
Based on the fact that I spend, I won't say lavishly, but I spend extraordinarily without having to account for my expenses, I actually searched for a way to get, if there was a budget app in Nigeria, but I could not get any. So I searched, and then I felt like, rather than searching, why not create? So being a law student, it's not something it's not something in my line. So I spoke to Timmy. Timmy is the chief executive officer. So Timmy is into the line of tech. We've been friends in secondary school. So I spoke to Timmy, and Timmy was able to fine-tune the whole idea based on his experience and, expertise and all that. So yeah, so that was how we actually came about Tracker.
So with Tracker, you are able to have all your bank accounts and financial services in one application. And right now on the platform, there's the availability of over 20 plus financial services and banks. And alongside this, you're able to create custom tailored budgets to better understand your financial lifestyle, as well as expense tracking features built into the application.
As students trying to build a startup while also focusing on their education, juggling both was initially a struggle, and then the issue of funding came up.
Initially, it was a struggle to start a company and go through school, but eventually we were able to find that balance where we were able to give adequate attention and time to the startup as well as our schooling, while being able to develop the application and make significant progress while maintaining near perfect grades in school. As you can expect from teenagers who are trying to build a startup in university, some challenges we faced included funding in the earlier rounds, because bootstrapping wasn't necessarily a viable option for students in universities without a steady income stream. But over time, we were able to overcome that challenge and we're still going strong.
When building the solution, one thing they both had in mind was to build one that's tailored to the Nigerian market. And within the few months they had to work together, they believe they have been able to achieve that.
Sister Alphonsine Caesar spends most of her day in gumboots, white veil tucked under a builder's hat, manning the micro hydroelectric plant she built to overcome daily electricity cuts in her town of Miti in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. She works around the clock with a team of nuns and engineers, greasing machinery and checking dials of a generator that is fed from a nearby reservoir and lights up a convent, church, 2 schools, and a clinic free of charge. Without the plant, residents would only have electricity 2 or 3 days a week for a few hours.
So this is the engine room. Here, we have a regulator to regulate the alternator. This is the alternator that produces the current, and here we have the cabinet that sends the current to the population. It's here we make adjustments. It's called the electrical cabinet.
According to the World Bank, despite millions of dollars in donor funding, only around 20% of the population has access to electricity. Fed up with relying on candlelight and costly fuel-powered generators, Caesar started raising money in 2015 to build the hydropower plant. She picked up skills as a young nun, repairing electrical faults around the convent, which convinced superiors to send her to study mechanical engineering. It took Caesar's convent 3 years to gather the required $297,000 and build a plant which generates between 0.05 and 0.1 megawatts. Thanks to Caesar's efforts, students at Miti's Mendelio Secondary School can now learn computer skills from screens rather than from books.
Cette électricité est très importante parce que
Before we had electricity, we had computers, but the computer course was always theoretical and it was a lot of pain. Sometimes, the electricity comes back at night when the children are no longer at school. It was rare to find power during the day. We had to use fuel for the generator, but buying fuel was very expensive. It was no longer possible at some point, so we were forced to stop and only teach theory for the computer science course.
rare des fois qu'il y avait le courant au cours de la journée.
Nous utilisons le courant qui provient chez les sœurs.
We use the current that comes from the sister's house. When we used the current of the national grid, there was load shedding, so there were untimely cuts in energy spent. We could go even a whole night without electricity in the hospital. So you will understand the importance of power at night in a hospital. It was difficult going all night without electricity. And it was like a resurrection when our neighbors gave us some of their current and gave us the energy we use.
La nuit sans électricité, c'était pénible.
Blackouts are a daily disruption in the Congo, a vast Central African country of around 90 million people that sources most of its electricity from a run-down and mismanaged hydropower system. The government has worked with foreign partners in an effort to increase the capacity of the mineral-rich nation's ailing grid. Critics say the new projects focus too much on powering mines and exporting electricity to neighboring countries. The world's first permanent NFT art museum has opened in Seattle, aiming to pull back the curtain on blockchain-based digital art. Non-fungible tokens are a type of digital asset that has exploded in popularity recently, with NFT artworks selling for millions of dollars.
We really realized the impact of being able to look at this type of art in a way where you actually slow down, you see all the details. You're not just scrolling through your phone or seeing people change their profile photos to this type of art. And I think that was an exciting opportunity to really bring that experience to Seattle.
The museum opened its doors in January and has been providing an outlet for artists, creators, and collectors to display their NFTs in a physical setting while aiming to educate the public about this fairly new market for digital art. Local generative digital artist Maxime Sergei attended the opening of the museum's Climate Conversation exhibition in April. His vector field designs that are sold as NFTs online can only be printed in physical form by robotic printers, as seen front and center in the current exhibition.
Previously, if you make a digital artwork or physical artwork, there were a lot of limitations about who can see the artwork or how they can own it. And so my take from this process was that using the right efficient blockchain, for me personally, it satisfied all my goals about exposing the world to my art and also creating a possibility to own the individual artworks by many people.
According to a March report from Ireland-based research and markets firm, the global non-fungible token market is expected to grow from $14.02 billion in 2021 to $21.3 billion in 2022, with an expectation that by 2026, the global NFT market will reach $82.43 billion.
An NFT is really just a contract that signifies the ownership of an asset of some kind. It's getting used a lot for digital art because there hasn't been a place for storing that ownership for digital art in a way that was accepted across a wide range of people. And so yeah, these tokens or non-fungible tokens are basically a contract or smart contract is what we call it on the blockchain that says this serial number belongs to this piece of art, and if you own this token, you are the rightful owner.
The museum has programming planned throughout the year with plans to continue down the path of education and conversation and take on important topics. Their preceding show, Pioneering Women, showcased early female NFT artists in the sphere of the art world.
If you're looking at a specific artwork, you want to evaluate it in terms of what you're going to get from that, not necessarily just the resale or the investment opportunity. I think that is an aspect of NFT art, just like traditional art. But I think when I think personally about the NFTs that I purchase for myself, I just really look at the artist's story and the creation process and the aesthetic of the art itself.
While many are still wondering what NFT art actually is, how to create it, and how to collect it, the Seattle NFT Museum will keep educating visitors entering its doors. Transport has always played a pivotal role in our daily lives, and with the continuous advancement in technology, the means has been seeing significant growth. The transport and logistics sector has now evolved from what it used to be, with startups making the most of innovations and evolution to make it more connected and convenient. In the last several years, the mobility sector has been getting attention with the upgraded digital methodologies to boost operational efficiency. Khalil Halilu, founder of ShapShap, joins us to discuss how a more structured logistics industry can better serve those in need of their services.
Khalil, glad to have you on Tech Trends today.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
So let's start by understanding what your take is on how the ecosystem has evolved today.
Well, 5 years back, if you are speaking about the African ecosystem, it's always about how it's struggling and how we can attract more investors, but the story has changed all over the world. If you look at the likes of Europe and America, they're almost full to a brim, and people are looking for avenues where they can invest. And Africa is now a really hot cake. and it's a very welcome development, and I'm glad to be part of it.
Now, just to understand a bit about how technology helps to solve problems, how is technology helping to sort out the issues with the logistics industry?
Okay, number one, the logistics industry or mobility in general in Africa is largely underserved. You always have more demand than supply. But also to our surprise, these so-called drivers or logistic companies have not been able to really capture, the full potential. Basically, it's like taking a small airline and giving it an Emirates route, to serve, despite the fact that there's so much opportunity, but we haven't really had an effective system and way to be able to absorb and capture this opportunity. And really, if you think about the gap between Africa's problem and solution, is not something that can be approached conventionally. You have to use systems, you have to apply technology in order, to close this gap. When you're talking about resources, most especially human resources, Africa is number one, but also when it comes to problem, we are number one. So it doesn't make sense for us to approach things conventionally. And it's not different when you talk about the logistics sector. You can see people, shouting about the airfare between Abuja and Lagos, which is just below $100. In US, if you're talking about a flight out of New York that is just an hour, minimum you're talking about $200, $250, So yes, there is opportunity, but the approach we have to use to capture this opportunity must be very different and also localized.
Okay, so maybe you should talk us through a bit about the role of policy, because there is the side of the startup, trying to solve the problem, and there's the side of the customer. But then, what role does policy play in all of this?
I mean, you're talking about the Africa Free Trade Zone. You're talking about unskilled laborers. These are people that do not have strong negotiating power. We have a lot of payment gateways coming up, a lot of marketplaces coming up. But in the logistics, it has been a little bit slow compared to, other complementing industries you have, coming up. So definitely policy needs to come into play, and building a marketplace without logistics infrastructure is like going to a desert and building a beautiful mall, when without a road, that leads there, or in the middle of the ocean. So definitely we need policies that will encourage, investment, mostly around logistics sector. And another thing to really look at is the kind of model that we run, the gig economy model, most especially for last mile delivery, is something that is borrowed from Europe and America, where it's typically be run by students, at their leisure time, or when they have free time. But if you look in Africa, you see someone with a family of 5 or 6, trying to run the same concept. So definitely we have to have policies that will look into this and see how best can this individual survive, and what contribution policy needs to impact on the sector in general. But definitely policy is a big thing when it comes to logistics sector.
Okay, just to hear from you, why did you choose to tackle the issues in the logistic industry? Why not any other vertical?
Well, number one, as a person, I love challenges. And secondly, a lot of people keep running from the hard work. I'm sure you've seen, one or two SMEs popping up in the logistics space, and after a while, they disappear. And in my previous work with my family, we produce a lot of hundreds of products, and the logistics was a nightmare, So basically, it's like turning my own nightmares into an opportunity to see, what we can do. And I'll tell you, we took 2 years, doing an operational research for Sharp, to understand the market before even agreeing on our business model. And I did deliveries personally on a bike within Lagos to have a feel of the market. Is definitely not easy. It's underestimated, and we really need to do better.
So how has it been for you, trying to do this?
I mean, so far so good. We are growing at a very good pace. We've completed over 40,000 deliveries in Lagos and Abuja. And we're scaling. And what we are doing mainly is to understand, this market and try to blend knowledge of the Nigerian market or the West African or African market and technology. There's one thing for a fact about this market is locals always win. If you look at the top 10 banks in the country, they're all local banks. You live in Lagos, around 1004 there, I think about 18 Zenith banks. I was counting on Google Maps. It doesn't make sense anywhere in the world, but it makes sense in Nigeria. And the fact that they're there surviving, it means, it's right. So there are things that are very local to us, and that is, what we're trying to do. And rather than seeing other companies as competitors, we see them as collaborators, because you find other external logistic companies come from outside the country, but they always need a local player to shake hand with, and we are positioned to make that happen.
So if you look at your startup in 5 years, how would it evolve towards?
Well, currently we believe we're number 3 in Lagos, as far as last mile delivery is concerned. And in 5 years, we hope to be number 1. And we hope to see every logistics last mile driver, wanting to be amongst the Sharp ecosystem. And, that's our dream. And I'm sure that will happen in less than 5 years to come.
Finally, Khalil, if I ask you to just give an advice to any startup watching this show now, what would that be?
Well, traction is everything, when it comes to startups. You have a lot of friends. When you sit over dinner, there'll always be like 5-7 ideas, around how to do the startup, what to do and whatnot. But where I see or what, we could do better is in terms of traction. The real people are those that roll up their sleeves, and get things going, and that's what I would encourage, every startup. Sometimes you have to do a lot of mathematics, a lot of pitch decks, a lot of presentations, but what matters the most is, traction, and the sooner you do that, the better. You see some startups, it's been virtual startup or, on a slide share for God knows how many months, every day iteration and whatnot. But just roll up your sleeve and, get to work. That would be my advice.
Khalil, thank you for being on the show. I wish you all the best.
Thank you very much. Have a great day.
I have been chatting with Khalil Alilu, founder Sharp, who is pushing to ensure that a more structured logistics industry evolves that can better serve the needs of e-commerce players and other in needs of such services. That's our show for today. You can watch these and previous editions of the show on Channels TV, YouTube, or cfablog.ng. For Tech Trends, I'm Chukwemeka Agbata.